Hello and welcome to the Rangers Review afternoon briefing. It's supposed to be a morning briefing, but it got cancelled thanks to my bad organisation. So apologies to everyone who was expecting us on at 9:30. We shall be back tomorrow at the normal time. I'm joined today by Adam Thompson. I was going to say Adam Thompson. Who the hell's that? Adam Thornton. You have slightly distracted me by putting your name as Adamski. Adamski. Yeah. I suppose that's your Twitter handle, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Hi, yeah, good to be here. Please don't mistake me for anyone. I like to think I'm a bit unique. So.
Well, indeed you are. Very unique indeed. But we've got lots to talk about. Let's not talk about Adam's problems. There is plenty going on in the world of Rangers, as always. We're going to start right away with a little bit that's come out in the press today about the defence. But obviously, guys, if you've got any questions, fire them in and I will try and get through them as we go through our time slot here. Michael Beale has been talking to the written press about the return of Connor Goldson and Ben Davies to the lineup and how that has coincided with an improvement in form. There have been 6 shutouts under the new manager, Michael Beale. That's compared to just 9 in the 27 before that under his predecessor, Giovanni van Bronckhorst. Quite significant, I would say. Here's what Michael Beale had to say. He said, it's all about partnerships, isn't it? I think a centre-half is all about the partnership. Connor Goldson has built up big ones here during his time, first of all with Nico Katic, then with Phil Helander, and finally a really strong partnership with Leon Balogun. He built another one with Calvin Bassey, and now he's building one with Davies. There's a time when Connor won't be fit either, but with our injury record this season, you're making me nervous talking about it. It's a fair point. But you've seen that Goldson has played with Davies. Results have improved since then. That's because there are 2 proper centre-backs. In my first game, we had 2 midfielders at centre-half. If you look at not having Goldson, Helander, Davies and John Souttar, then there's a reason why certain results come your way. If you look at the list of players that we've been missing and you're asking others to stand up, then that's the conversation I've been having in here. I've asked them to stand up for each other, and they've done that. Now, Adam, it goes without saying, I mean, you don't have to be a tactical guru like yourself to say in football that if you have a strong, stable centre-half partnership, then it's a good foundation from which to build from. Every good manager over the last 30 years has kind of taken that approach from Scotland and further afield. So it's hardly surprising that form's improved with the arrival of these two to form a partnership. How good do you think this has got the potential to be? I'll look at it. I know I'm going on here, but I'm just going to say one last thing. Yep. I'll look at it and think, here are 2 guys who are comfortable on the ball, who are comfortable bringing it out. Goldson's got that wonderful long ping, which we saw in action at the weekend, and we see in action every weekend. It seems to be getting better and better. While Davies moves the ball with his left foot really, really quickly through the lines and is comfortable at pushing forward with the ball at his feet. So you've kind of got the best of both worlds in terms of bringing the ball out from the back and developing play from there with these 2 centre-halves. The opposite side of things, there might be arguments about the defensive nous. What's your take?
So I think it's fine to talk about the partnerships, but I think the most important thing, and has been the most important thing since 2018, is Connor Goldson. Far and away the best defender that we've had in that time for me overall. When you think of everything, I'm not talking about who can head the ball the furthest or who can tackle the hardest. Overall, how he uses the ball, how he organises the defence, how he works with younger players. He has been he's threatened the attacking third in the sort of earlier years as well. For me, it is mostly about Connor Goldson, and I don't mean that to dull everyone else, but there's no coincidence that those are the partnerships that look the best. Goldson and Helander, for me, was a very, very good partnership. There was a nice mix there. They're both very physical, but both could play a little bit. Goldson more than Helander in terms of the passing range. What I think we've seen now, and it's maybe a railing against modern football type thing, is we see people discussing how Ben Davies isn't physical or isn't physical enough and doesn't dominate every single forward that we have, without that real realisation that it's quite rare to be as all-round as Goldson is, I think. So what Ben Davies has is a lot of strengths that complement Connor Goldson. I wouldn't say personally he has many weaknesses, but what I would say is that sort of marshalling that Goldson does, that physicality that he brings, Ben Davies maybe isn't quite there yet. But as you've said, and to reference Saturday as an example, Ben Davies played a couple of really nice balls straight through the midfield to Alfredo Morelos on Saturday, which just gets things turning. With the exception of Goldson, I'm not sure many other centre halves that we've had in the past 5 years can do that. So I think separately they're more than good enough to play for us. I think as a duo, I think it's really, really interesting to see how that settles down. I like the look of the partnership. Like you said, it's balanced. Goldson can be the more aggressive, go and get the ball, and Ben Davies is there sort of sweeping up, if you like. So I think that works quite well. I think expecting both to be exactly the same type of player is probably unrealistic, because you'd like to have a little bit of balance in there. So yeah, long story short, I think the signs were great before the injuries. I think at Anfield they were pretty good, and even, dare we say it, for the first half at Ibrox against Liverpool, they both looked relatively decent as that partnership, and they've kind of picked off where they left, as far as I'm concerned. It's never going to be perfect, we know that, particularly with the goalkeeper situation, chopping and changing behind them. Like you said, it'd be good to have a solid base there, but those two coming in, getting minutes, getting used to each other, I think we've seen huge benefits from it.
Yeah, well, forget about Philip Helander, because we just don't know when he's going to be back. You can't rely on that. So let's just look at the four that Rangers have got there at the moment. You've got the two that we've mentioned, Davies and Goldson. You've also got Leon King, who's obviously a very talented young kid coming through, probably thrown in at the deep end and ahead of where his development curve was, given the Champions League tests that he's faced. But I thought domestically he was always more than comfortable, to be honest. And then you've got John Souttar, who will be coming back, and we know is ready pretty much now to get back into that team. That looks pretty good to me as a four. However, Michael Beale clearly doesn't agree, because we know he's been looking for another centre-half.
Yeah.
Now, it's been posited to me that what he's actually looking for here is an alternative to Ben Davies for certain games. So just like sometimes in the Gerrard era, they would play Goldson and Helander, and other times they'd play Goldson and Balogun, they want someone they can interchange Davies with for certain types of games where the aerial threat it's required to have more of a kind of siege defender. Yeah. Is that your understanding of why you think Michael Beale might have been looking for another centre-half?
Yeah, definitely. I think he want another left footer, absolutely, or certainly want someone who is comfortable on the left. Leon King has looked absolutely fine on the left at various points. He's still young, he's still learning his game. I think he's going to be a very good player for us. But sort of pitching him in on that left-hand side probably isn't ideal for his development. So I would suggest that bringing in someone in the mould of a Jake Cooper, who is 6'6", 6'7", left-footed, can also play a bit. He's sort of, to me, similar vibes to Helander in that sense, although a couple of inches taller. So that to me makes a lot of sense. I do think he'll want 5 anyway, Jonny, because particularly because of the injuries, particularly because King is maybe a little bit younger, and we know centre halves can sometimes take a little bit of time to come in, and then particularly because John Souttar has his injury troubles as well. I definitely think he'd be looking for 5, so someone who can bring that height but is also left-footed and can compete with Davies, absolutely, or be in rotation the same way as Balogun and Helander were. I think would just round that off nicely, and I think he'd be comfortable with that as a number, experience, age, skill set. I think that would be a pretty strong 5.
Adam, one of the things you're famous for, amongst other things that like your glowing personality, is your love for James Tavernier. You've never hidden it. No. You've never tried to keep it buried away. You've always been very prominent that you absolutely think what James Tavernier gives to Rangers is essential. And listen, you've got someone here that agrees with you. I've always been a big proponent of him too. I think he's been a magnificent servant to the club. There's growing concern, though, I think it's safe to say, around some of his performances recently. He's not had a good season by his own high standards. He has got epically high standards, though, to be fair. So you're judging it against the guy who's pretty much been the best data-led Scottish football player for the last 5 years. I mean, Celtic fans will bristle at that, but just if you look at the pure data, James Tavernier is in the top most seasons. And in fact, if you look at the Stats Bomb data now on OBV, I think he's top, and he's not playing well. So it tells you about what he's delivering in terms of the underlying metrics that are there. Now, we know he was carrying an injury. The club denied it at the time towards the dying embers of the Giovanni van Bronckhorst era. But he's not carrying that injury now. And yet, just to me, just doesn't look quite himself. Now, that could be due to tactics, and you might be able to explain that, or it might be other factors. But he's not having the kind of influence that he's had previously on the club. What do you ascribe it to? Do you think he's being unfairly criticised, Adam?
No, I don't think so, because like you said, when you hit those high standards and you hit them as consistently, I think you do get held to a different level of expectation. I do think, as I think we've said in the past, that we have been, as a fan base, as a club, over-reliant on James Tavernier, Ryan Kent, Alfredo Morelos as the three over the last 5 years. And it would be good to get away from that. Now, we've seen guys coming in like Tillman and Sakala in particular, who are bringing the numbers in terms of goals and assists. Now, logically, if they're bringing those numbers, then other people can be getting involved in that as well. But if Tavernier is not having to get up and do this, or Kent is not having to go and do that, and it's being spread about equally, it's only natural that he'll maybe take a little bit more of a back seat. Ironically, I think since Michael Beale came in, he has been playing better than he was pre Michael Beale. However, the goals and assists have fallen off a cliff. So that, I haven't quite looked at it in too much detail. I know the fullback stayed a little bit deeper against Ross County at the weekend there, because we had 4 or 5 forwards on the park for most of the game. But it feels like Michael Beale said himself at Tynecastle, it was Tavernier's best defensive display since he came in. I thought it was great. He had that clearance off the line in the dying embers of the Scottish Cup game at St Johnstone. So it's maybe more that we're seeing him involved in less moments, and you could argue that he should still be involved in more, and I agree with that. Whether he's moving freer, I'm not so sure. I've seen people saying he's getting skinned by every winger in the league. 1v1 against tricky wingers has never really been his strong suit, I don't think, anyway. So there's probably lots of confirmation bias there. There's probably a natural decline as someone is 31, coming up for 32 at the end of this year, who has a physical specimen going up and down that wing on his own for 5 years, pretty much. So I think there might just be maybe a little bit of everything there. A drop in form, absolutely. Not able to keep up those ridiculous numbers. But then possibly we've got other players starting to shoulder the burden, which means that we notice it because he's not doing it, but hopefully there's less impact on the team. The flip side of that, I guess, is looking at it logically as a Rangers fan, and it might blur the lines, but I'm a Rangers fan more than I'm a James Tavernier fan. Coming up to 32 as your right back and your highest earning player, we should be starting to think, if it's not this summer, but certainly the windows after that, the immediate windows after that, we should be starting to think about bringing in a Rid van Yilmaz type on that wing that is not just Zukowski coming in, or maybe a young player that it's easy just not to play. If we think Adam Devine is that player, he should be getting a lot more minutes than he is, personally. If not, I think over the next 15, 18 months, we need to be bringing in someone who can phase James Tavernier out, I think, because that's what everybody wants. Probably people want it for different reasons than I do, but if I want the best players playing in the positions that are there at the club, until we're comfortable that Tavernier's attacking output isn't worse than his defensive output, I think he'll stay in the team, and rightly so, but we need to be looking at forward planning for it, 100%.
Yeah, I think Tavernier's form this season could be the victim of just being overplayed. Fundamentally, the guy's played far too many games over the last 5 years, and never more so than in the Seville season, obviously, because the volume and the intensity of what was required of him was absolutely significant. And I think this is going to be an issue in 10 years down the line with players of this generation, because there's so much going on that they are expected to go to the well so often, and you kind of need to give them a little bit of pressure release. And I think that's something that Tavernier, who wants to play every week, and that's kind of understandable, but has needed over the last couple of years and really hasn't had. I agree with you on Devine. I think he needs to be given more opportunity if that's going to be someone that's going to come in and actually make a real impact, like a Nathan Patterson would have if he'd remained. I like Jack Harkness right back in the youth team. I think he stands out, which is what you need to do if you're in the Lowland League and if you're at that level. And I think he's got an opportunity to make the first team, but he obviously needs to accelerate his development. That's what they all have to do. And Devine will have to push and fight and scratch just like Nathan Patterson did.
Yeah.
But it's a position that they'll need to think about over the long term, because you want to, as you say, graduate Tavernier slowly down from first choice and unassailable to first choice and rotated to second choice. And that should happen over the next 2 seasons, I would think.
And I think there'll always be a big deal made about it, just because of how synonymous he has been with this last 5 years and the couple of years before that. So there will always be a big deal made of it, rather than a player just leaving abruptly or whatever. If someone is winding themselves down over a period of however long his contract is, another 2 or 3 years, then there probably will be a big deal made of it. But we need to be in a position where we are bringing someone in, and we have to remember Nathan Patterson only really got his 100% shot when Tavernier was injured at the tail end of the 55 season as well. So we need to start giving Devine those minutes. Absolutely. Maybe now we've got these game a week type things. For example, Partick Thistle at the weekend. Adam Devine, could he play that? James Tavernier gets 2 weeks break from games. Can we do that a couple of times between now and the end of the season to see what he's like? We'll absolutely wait and see. But I think come the summer, there needs to be a decision made there where, are we just going ahead with the same again here, or are we thinking about, let's bring in someone who is early to mid-20s that is going to be the person?
I totally agree with you. I actually think sometimes you have to kind of overrule the player, and you have to be strong enough to say, no, you can't play every game. It's not good long term. I think Connor Goldson's another one that you would say, if John Suter's back and fit, a Partick Thistle is a perfect example of a game Connor Goldson doesn't have to play. You've got an international defender there who's capable and comfortable in Scottish football, who needs games to keep him sharp. You have to give him the odd game. It's as simple as that. And it's not bad for those players to be rotated out every now and then. Right, we're going to move on to another topic. A wee bit of housekeeping, first of all. George A. saying, is this a new time for the Rangers Review? I've been sat patiently at 9:30 past 2 mornings. George, I assure you we will be going back to the 9:30 slot as of tomorrow. Apologies. Derek is away in Norway celebrating his birthday. None of us know what age he is. He keeps that very close to the vest. But he's off this week, which leaves just myself and Joshua. So we've kind of been scrambling about a bit with our own days off, trying to find times that suit, etc., etc. But as of tomorrow, we'll be back to the usual 9:30. So apologies to anyone who's only just catching up with us now because of that. Just one more thing, guys. We have got a partnership at the moment with the club. We have got some tremendous prizes in the coming weeks. But the big one for this week is 2 hospitality tickets to Rangers versus Partick Thistle at the weekend. All you need to do, it's completely free to sign up, is sign up to our newsletter. Or if you're already a newsletter subscriber, then that's absolutely fine. You'll be in with the chance to win. When you get our newsletter, there's a wee form. You have to put your name and your phone number in so we can contact you if you win. And one person will win a pair of tickets for that game. So not only do you get the newsletter, which is terrific, straight to your inbox, you get a bespoke opinion piece every day, Monday to Friday, with the exception of game days. You will also be put into the mix to win hospitality tickets for Partick Thistle. And you can see the email address, www.rangersreview.co.uk/newsletter. It takes 5 seconds to sign up. You just pop your email address in, hit enter, and you're good to go. And that will give you the opportunity to win. So it's a great one, and I hope everyone signs up for that. Right, got a question for me, actually, Adam, but I've also got questions for you, but I'm just going to address this one from Connor Fleming. Jonny, one for you. You reference Hatate a lot and the scouting around that transfer and his qualities. Is Raskin that player for us that you've been asking for? Well, I think, Connor, that Raskin and Hatate are quite different kinds of players. Raskin can play, I think, more comfortably than Hatate ever could at the base of a midfield. Hatate's not got that defensive discipline. But what he gives you in getting forward is he gives you that kind of creative spark. He'll try things. He loses the ball quite a lot, but he's always someone who can provide a spark and pull something off that others can't in a tight game. I think Raskin has those qualities. He's got that aggression in forward areas to find the pass. He's very, very progressive, and I'm looking forward to seeing his packing stats, Adam, once that becomes available, because in terms of bringing players out with taking players out of the game with a pass, that's something he's absolutely capable of. But what I like about Raskin, it's not another player that's just been kind of plucked from the English Championship or English League One. It's going to Belgium. I know that's a league that Rangers are comfortable in terms of the scouting setup. But you'd have to say, I think there's a fair bit of talent over there in the Belgian league, and to pluck a player of his age, I think it's a really exciting one. And on top of that, if you looked at that 7-minute cameo at the weekend, it was quite flashy. There was a lot to like. He looks like he's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, a lot of fun is how I would describe it. A bit of dynamism in there that we've maybe not had at various points. I think energy is a big thing in central midfield for us. And I don't just mean running about, snapping into tackles. I mean that sort of energy, that forward run. He dropped his shoulder a couple of times and tried to go past a defender or a defensive midfielder, which is exactly what you want. I like that he's also clearly been bought with a specific role in mind. And you can have a debate here. The manager has referenced a few times that it'll probably be Raskin or Kamara in a game, unlikely to be both from the start, which I think is really interesting. So you can see him fitting in that left-sided number 8 role with a Xhaka or Lundstram at the 6, certainly for the rest of this season. That's not to say, like you said, that he couldn't fill in at 6 as well if we want to go for that. But it's interesting then that he's got that in mind, and he thinks that Raskin can do a similar job to Kamara, if you like, the Kamara's strong points, but then Raskin has more in terms of that attacking threat, dynamism going forwards, being able to see the passes that maybe Kamara is less suited to. So yeah, I like it a lot. I have done since we were linked. Was it just the summer we were linked, or maybe the January
I think
window?
it's been going back a lot longer than that, to be honest. I think it's at least a year.
I really like the idea of it. It's a player that I think is exciting. It's a player we've spoken about, whether it's on here or whether it's on Heart and Hand, about the need for Rangers to get players in that are that 21 to 23 category who are still developing as players if they were in sort of the top 5 leagues or so, but in Scotland they can come in and be 100% ready-made, and we can almost finish them off. I hate that, and I kind of they're always going to go type scenario, but we can sort of finish them off and give them that 2 or 3 years, and then when they hit 23, 24, they're the best version of themselves and can go for hopefully lots of money. That's what we're hoping for with this player trading model. So it is only 10 minutes, absolutely, and it is against Ross County in a game that maybe didn't have much going for it in the second half, but the signs are good, and they certainly back up what I've seen from the games I've watched over the last year or so. So it's very exciting to see. Hopefully he's right into the starting lineup on Sunday, which I think he probably will be.
Okay, got a difficult one for you, Adam. I'm going to go straight back to you with this from Andrew Stewart. It's a question about Alfredo Morelos and his lack of movement in the penalty box. Andrew posits that you rarely see him make the run across the defender. Instead, he stands still between the middle and back post. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think we used it to good effect in the 55 season, where Aribo would go across for set piece season in particular. Aribo would go across the front post and you'd see him lurking at the back post. I guess if that first part of that is working, then Morelos' second part seems obvious. But if we then haven't been doing that for whatever reason, maybe we've not had the height. I know we've tried it with Tillman a couple of times and it's came off too. It can look a little bit silly. Morelos in the box is a strange one to me, absolutely. He obviously does a lot outside the box, which is great when he comes and he links play and he moves and he'll go down the right and he'll use a lot of his physicality out there. But inside the box, it always feels like he just wants to wait until the ball comes and then just hit it as quickly as he can every single time. It's that finesse that I really struggle with in the box. How you teach that at that age, I'm not sure, but I definitely think he could, in a way that when Kamar Roof comes in the box, he seems to come alive with his movement. He just seems to be constantly on his haunches, wanting to move forward, wanting to move to one side. I don't think we quite see that with Morelos. It's almost like I've been involved in the build-up and I've got it to the other attackers. I'm now just going to stand in this place, give me the ball, and I'll score. I don't know how that fixes. I agree it can be a little bit of an issue, but I would also say if we have other players that are able to get in there and provide him with what he needs, it's maybe less of an issue.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. That's a good summation of it. I think Alfredo Morelos started his career as a midfielder. I think that's well known. And to me, he doesn't look, and he hasn't since he's been at Rangers, looked like a player that's just a natural striker who's been doing it since he was like 6.
No.
You know, the way Ali McCoy's just naturally found himself in space at all times. He was always moving away from players.
Yeah.
Just kind of concentrating on that, moving away so that he would be there to arrive wherever the ball was with space and time. And it's the one thing you would say if Morelos had that, though, Adam, he wouldn't be at Rangers. Let's be honest, he'd be a £50 million player in the Premier League or elsewhere, because that's the one thing that's really missing from his skill set. I suppose the question about Morelos now is, because of his kind of physical profile, you know, he's not a natural athlete, I wouldn't say. You look at someone like a Connor Goldson or James Tavernier, they're natural athletes. Morelos is more kind of, he's one of those guys, he's a bit like a John Hartson type. You wonder what he's going to be like 10 years after he retires almost. I wonder if he's actually at the age he's now, is he kind of over the hump? Is he capable of getting back up to that level that we saw where he was absolutely blootering the Europa League in 2008, 2018, 2019? I'm not sure.
It's funny because you think when he arrived at sort of 21, he was a lot thinner than he is now, but within about a year or so, he fairly filled out in terms of muscle, etc. at 21, 22. So there probably is a debate. I'm not a doctor or a physician or anything like that, but there probably is a debate that his physical peak has came earlier than maybe some players you would think, and I'd maybe put Wayne Rooney in the same category as that. I always remember when Rooney came on at Everton at 16, and I was 16 at the time, and I was like, I do not look anywhere near as physically built as him. So maybe it just happens for players. Their physical peak comes a little bit earlier. Maybe Morelos has hit his. I'm not sure. He certainly doesn't dominate defences in the way that he did before. People can attribute that to mentality, attitude, application, injuries, whatever they want, but possibly it is just sheer physicality that might not work. I could see absolutely, like you said, within the next 3 or 4 years, that kind of declining earlier than maybe you would expect for some other players, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, putting weight on to deal with Scottish football is not new. I talked to Mark Hateley about it recently in an interview for the Rangers Review. He basically said he went away after struggling for the first 2 or 3 months in Scottish football. He was at fighting weight for Serie A, where he could dominate defenders and bully people in that league physically. But coming back to Scotland or British football in general, he just decided, I need to bulk up here because, number one, the referees let away a lot more. So the game itself is a lot more physical in a way that you wouldn't have in European leagues. And number two, players are a lot bigger, more muscle, more bulk, and kind of there's less onus at that time on playing kind of fancy football out from the back like there was in Italy. So to match up with those, and I think Mark Hateley put on something like 1.5 stone of pure muscle to bulk up and make himself ready for Scottish football. So Morelos has done something similar. As you say, Adam, when you look back to that Kashina era when Morelos first came in, he's just a skinny kid.
Yeah.
But he's clearly had to kind of work on that to make him ready to have the kind of battles that he's had with defenders. And he's got that ability to let sort of players, even much bigger players, bounce off him. So I think some of the talk about his physical condition is a bit overplayed because I think that's a big part of it. But at the same time, I look at him and think, are you the same player that you were 3 years ago? Are you the same player that you were 2 years ago? And I think sometimes in flashes, he does look like that guy. But I don't think we've ever seen such a sustained period of it since. And I find that slightly concerning.
This is the debate for the club, isn't it? It's people always get, or sorry, I should say, Ross Wilson, etc., always get some stick for allowing players to run down their contracts. Now, I don't know, certainly in Morelos' case, other than that bid that we had 3 years ago where it was decided not to take that bid for a number of reasons, financial, whatever. Other than that, I'm not aware that there's been any hugely strong interest that we have rejected bids for. So I guess it's kind of out of your hands a little bit there, isn't it? If I'm not saying we'd be actively trying to sell him at any point during that, but if there's no bids coming in and they won't sign a new contract, then your hands are tied a little bit. You can't just say, "I'll just sell him with a year to go." I don't think anyone wanted them last summer, if I'm being honest. So, or maybe not at the money that we wanted, but we're entitled to ask what we think is fair market value. But right now, I guess the decision is for the manager and for Ross Wilson is, do we sink another? I don't know how much money Morelos is on, but over a 4-year contract, it won't be far off £8 million. I would have thought. So,
Yeah.
do we sink that money in now for a player, as we've just said, that will be? I think he'll be 30 by the time the contract ends, and possibly on a decline by then. Is that good sense for us? Can we get someone else out there in the market that may cost round about that 8 million for transfer fee and wages, but then we'll have an asset that we can sell in 2 or 3 years' time that would then be able to replenish that. So I guess it's a bit of a stick or a twist, isn't it? Who knows how much we've sunk into him? Probably about 8 to 10 million in wages. Do we go for that again, or do we cut our losses on the investment, if you like, rather than talking about the player? Do we cut our losses now and say we got a lot out of that player? He's the the European goal scorer. He's been our top striker. He's gave us some fantastic moments. Do we then just move on and just sort of cut that loss there and go? That's the interesting part of this, I think, because it might not necessarily be that both parties are just completely wanting a clean break. The player might want more than what the club is willing to offer for those reasons. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
I don't think you would get Alfredo Morelos to sign a new contract for less than 40k a week. That's my understanding. Personally, I just don't think he's now the player that is worth that kind of outlay. I think it's time to just draw a line under it and say he's been a brilliant player for the club.
Yeah,
but he's gone a bit stale in terms of the Scottish League. And while he's clearly motivated, I think, to play in the Champions League, that would be something he would be keen to do. I just think for the way Michael Beale wants to play, for the kind of person that he's looking to get in and around the club, in terms of younger, more physically aggressive players who can deliver the kind of football that he's wanting to do, I think it might be just best that you call it a day with Alfredo Morelos, as popular as he's been and as good as he's been. So I would urge him to go and have a real go at it for the last few months of the season, leave a legend, because I think if he does leave, he will leave with everyone's best wishes and he'll be really well thought of. Someone that's probably linked in the tabloids for the next 5 years as well to come back.
Yeah.
And that's because of what he's achieved while he's been here. But the way that Michael Beale's going around his transfer business so far, you've got Todd Cantwell's 24, isn't he?
Yeah.
And Nicholas Raskin is 21.
Mm-hmm.
It's clear he's looking for young, hungry, specific types of players. And I think they might be thinking, as a number 9, you want someone who's a little bit more elastic in how they can perform. I think Michael Beale wants someone who's a bit more of an all-rounder. Alfredo Morelos was quite quick when he was younger. I don't think he's got the same pace as he once had. I think having a number 9 that's got a bit of pace about them would be something that Michael Beale would quite like. And
then you look at the makeup of the striking options, I guess, as well. You've got Cholak in there, who's doing a very specific job, and he's 28, 29. You've got Kamar Roof, who's a year or two older, who the manager does really like. That'll be an interesting one as well in the summer. Yeah. Whether that would be a kind of cut your losses type thing, if you can get him to the Championship probably for a couple of million and reinvest that given the money. But if not, I think the manager would be more than happy having Kamar Roof around if he can contribute, which is always the big if. So yeah, someone coming in 5-6 years younger than that, 22, 23, who has a bit of pace, has a bit of clinical finishing ability, can move defences around, I think is key. That was really interesting that he prioritised that. It was the keepers and then that, I think, was the sort of top 2 priorities that he said. So that will be interesting to watch come the summer, because I think we probably do need one in anyway, even if Morelos was to stay. I think when he plays the one or maybe the two up front at times, I think again he'll probably want 4 or 5 options in there. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting summer for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, Adam, we're going to call it a day. I've kept you for long enough, but thank you very, very much for joining me. Always great to have a chat with you and get your insight into Rangers. You're always very, very interesting. So thanks very much for joining me, mate.
Thanks for having me on.
No probs. Right, guys, all that's left is for me to remind you once again, 2 hospitality tickets in the competition that we've got running at the moment. Absolutely free to join. You just have to sign up for our newsletter. You can see the email address along the bottom there, www.rangersreview.co.uk/newsletters. 5 seconds, stick your email address in, and you'll get an email from us asking you to put your name and your address into a wee form, and then that'll be you. It also means that when we do future ones, you'll be in for it as well, because we're doing the next 4 home games are going to be hospitality tickets giveaways, and if you're a newsletter subscriber, you'll be in to the mix for those. So go on there and do that. That's a big help to us, and obviously gets you guys an opportunity for what would be a very, very exciting and enjoyable afternoon at Ibrox. So until next time, guys, thank you very much for watching. We will be back tomorrow at 9:30 with Joshua Barry and Mr. Stevie Clifford. Until then, thanks for watching.